Guitarists all over the world are captivated by Eddie Van Halen's revolutionary sound in the mid-1970s, when he first introduced it to the rock genre. In an era when guitar solos were considered the pinnacle of musical achievement, Eddie's two-handed tapping method revolutionized the instrument by pushing its capabilities to new heights. Thanks to his unique approach, Eddie became a guitar legend in no time, shocking listeners and fellow artists with his technical prowess. His performance was groundbreaking, not merely accomplished. This kind of breakthrough would alter the course of rock guitar history and serve as an inspiration to a new generation. The intricate relationship between Eddie and Jimmy Page, a guitarist from a different time whose eerie, multi-layered soundscapes had cemented Led Zeppelin's status as one of the greatest rock bands of all time, went unnoticed by most fans. Page was highly regarded for his audacious improvisations and ethereal compositions. Served as an emblem of classic rock and an unmovable pillar. But underneath the surface, there were layers of respect, creative influence, and, as history would reveal, a hint of competition in Van Halen's connection. This relationship, as Page would show years later, evolved from mutual respect into something far more complex, and it defied easy classifications. Just as important as the things that brought them together on their journey together were the things that set them apart. Each embodying a distinct period in rock guitar history, united by a common goal of expanding musical frontiers. From their early days together, Van Halen had looked up to Page. When Eddie was a young guitarist, he was enchanted by Page's almost magical techniques for creating aggressive, raw sounds. Eddie's inquisitiveness about Page's fretting manner and one-handed riffs led him on a quest for knowledge that culminated in his groundbreaking two-handed tapping technique. Despite this, Van Halen's self-assurance increased as his success grew, and he became more comfortable criticizing the artists who had influenced him. By the 1980s, Eddie had already panned Page's live shows, calling them sloppy. And the lack of accuracy shocked the audience and seemed to undermine the mutual regard they had for one another. Although both artists continued to reimagine their places in rock history, the underlying animosity between Van Halen and the other titans was set up by his fearless criticism, which portrayed him as a genius who was not scared to question the established icons of rock. Imagine Eddie Van Halen as a young, naive, and resolute fan of Led Zeppelin, standing in the Los Angeles Forum throng during one of their concerts. Jimmy Page, known for his legendary dragon outfit and wild hair, was in the middle of a searing solo, producing noises that appeared to be beyond the capabilities of a single guitar. Eddie had never witnessed such a combination of mastery and abandonment in a single performance, yet it was a monumental moment for him because he had always challenged convention. Page's style extended beyond mere speed; it encompassed the art of raising one hand mid-riff, utilizing only one to craft elaborate, resonant sounds that mesmerized his listeners. This seemed like a call to adventure and creativity to Eddie. That night, he would return home energized and resolved to put his newfound knowledge to use by expanding upon his observations and creating an even more experimental style that would eventually become his hallmark sound. These instances laid the groundwork for Van Halen's adoration of Page, which was never, however, unwarranted. As Eddie honed his own approach, he embraced tapping, but unlike Page, who would use his free hand to tap the fretboard, Eddie would integrate tapping with melodic phrasing, giving it an almost orchestral quality. Yet, Van Halen's readiness to criticize his early influences increased in tandem with the growth of his reputation and self-assurance as a guitarist. By describing Led Zeppelin and Page's contributions to the band as iclassics, he showed his admiration for Page's lyrics and studio work. Eddie, on the other hand, had less complimentary recollections of Page's live shows. He stunned fans in an audacious 1981 interview with Guitar World when he said that Page was sloppy on stage, acting as if he had a damaged hand and was just 2 years old. For those who loved both guitarists, Eddie's criticism was like a challenge. The upcoming Van Halen star was suddenly praising Jimmy Page, the towering figure whose thunderous riffs and otherworldly stage presence had revolutionized rock. A generational shift in guitar player values may have been hinted at by Eddie's remarks. Anxieties between the two idols grew, in the eyes of many, as Page's ominous, enigmatic imagery clashed with Eddie's explosive perfection. The public wanted to know if this was an honest assessment or if the prodigy was just trying to distance himself from the legend. Two well-known rock guitarists from different times and styles, Jimmy Page and Eddie Van Halen, became household names by the 1980s. The profundity and mysticism of Page's work with Led Zeppelin were highly acclaimed. Layers of tones and effects gave each song in Zeppelin's catalog an almost alchemical quality, transporting listeners to other sonic realms. Melodies that Page drew out sounded old, complicated, and occasionally eerily gloomy. He played more like a conductor than a guitarist. His riffs on Kashmir and Stairway to Heaven, among others, established a benchmark for moody rock that went beyond technical proficiency. On the other hand, the room was ablaze with the energy of guitar maestro Van Halen, who had burst onto the scene with a new agenda. For Eddie, each note was a demonstration of his command and mastery of the instrument. His live performances breathed new life into rock with their rapid tapping and dizzying solos. Page enjoyed playing with atmosphere and intrigue, while Eddie was more concerned with volume, accuracy, and drama. On stage, he was unstoppable, smiling his trademark grin as he performed almost impossible solos. He saw rock guitar as an instrument for exploring new territory, not for hiding or restraining itself. In the eyes of their audience, Page was more of a craftsman and Eddie more of a virtuoso. This disparity became clear over time. Still, they were practically silently competing with one another because of this difference. Word got around about Eddie's harsh criticisms of Page's clumsy and unfocused live performances, and soon fans were picking sides. Eddie seemed to be taking aim at the established order, but was he really dissatisfied with Page's less methodical and more improvisational performance style? A conflict of ideologies emerged from this understated animosity. Jimmy Page embodied the bluesy, adventurous, and storied past of rock and roll, while Eddie Van Halen was the lightning-fast, energy-filled present of the genre. For rock guitar lovers, these two icons embodied a changing standard for what it meant to be great. Time passed and Jimmy Page still hadn't responded to Eddie Van Halen's biting review of his live shows. The fans took Page's apparent decision to remain silent as a sign that she wanted the criticism to linger unanswered. A devastating era for rock guitar in Page, whose legacy was partially intertwined with Eddie's, came to an end in 2020 with his untimely death. Eddie ended his long period of quiet. Page paid tribute to Eddie's talent in an introspective speech, describing him as the real deal, a guitarist whose stunning style had changed rock music forever. Fans had felt the strain for a while, and Page's comments hit home, and his compliments of Eddie's accomplishments appeared to mend fences between the two icons. Eddie Van Halen had elevated rock guitar to new heights with his innovative skills and distinctive tone, and Page's comments did more than just compliment him. Noting that Eddie's courageous approach has motivated other musicians, Page acknowledged the younger guitarist's groundbreaking genius and its impact on the genre. While doing so, Page appeared to contemplate his own legacy, maybe sensing in Eddie's advances the same drive to innovate that had propelled his own path with Led Zeppelin all those years before. Fans were left with a bittersweet feeling by Page's message following Eddie's passing. It was a reverent acknowledgement of Eddie's groundbreaking contributions to the guitar community and a last acknowledgement that their shared rock experience had a lasting impact. There was now respect where there was once an implied animosity. His eulogy, which closed out a tale of shared inspiration, artistic disagreement, and mutual respect between the two rock colossi, expressed the depth of his adoration. In rock music, Jimmy Page and Eddie Van Halen's legacies reverberate in every corner. Every one of them has left an everlasting impression that permeates the entire genre, not only their own approaches. By fusing blues, folk, and psychedelic rock into pieces that sounded like voyages through sound, the rich, almost magical style of music of the era gave rock an air of depth and atmosphere. Songs like Kashmir and No Quarter were made with a visionary ear and a precise touch. They were immersive experiences, not just music. Beyond his technical prowess, Page left behind an ability to take listeners on a journey, where every note contributed to a larger story and emotional fabric. Meanwhile, Eddie Van Halen pioneered techniques that gave rock its current, explosive edge, transforming the electric guitar into a machine of pure energy and speed. Rock concerts were physical spectacles thanks to his revolutionary tapping style and frantic stage persona. His solos were displays of courage and skill. With his boundless energy and enthusiasm, he pushed the boundaries of guitar playing and gave Van Halen their signature sound, which was at once thrilling and dangerous. In contrast to Page's ethereal and everlasting legacy, Van Halen's is sheer power and inventiveness personified. It is dynamic and explosive. They prove that brilliance can come from very different places by contrasting their styles, which in turn show the many possibilities within rock. Both Page and Van Halen were instrumental in taking the genre in new directions, with Page's focus on acoustic nuance and Van Halen's pursuit of technical perfection. The uncommon bond between them, in which animosity gave way to adoration, was further highlighted by Page's affection for Eddie following his death. There is no one way to achieve greatness in rock, just as there is no one way to achieve greatness in life. Their contributions are interdependent, and they both push boundaries that motivate guitarists of all ages.